I had not seen my mother in 18 years until she walked into my uncle's conference room wearing a designer coat. She did not ask how I survived at 16. She did not ask where I lived, what I ate, or how I finished school. She simply asked where the money was. Then the lawyer opened the will, and her smile cracked, because my uncle did not just leave an inheritance. He left a trap. What she did not understand was that he had carefully documented her worst secret and timed the truth like a bomb ready to explode at the exact second she felt safe. My name is Morgan Allen. And for the last 18 years, I had trained myself to believe that the woman sitting across from me was a stranger. I had buried every memory of her under layers of work, routine, discipline, and the thick emotional armor my uncle had helped me build piece by piece. But now she was sitting less than 4 feet away, resting in a tall leather chair in a private conference room in Ravenport, Massachusetts. Her hair was a perfectly styled shade of blonde that clearly required expensive upkeep, and her skin was smooth and glowing with the kind of shine that only money and professional treatments can maintain. She wore a designer coat that probably cost at least $5,000, hanging loosely over her shoulders as if wealth were just a natural part of her body. There was no guilt in her eyes, no regret, only a sharp, hungry expectation. The room was quiet, except for the soft hum of the climate system and the faint scratching sound of a pen moving across paper. Outside the wide floor-to-ceiling windows, the gray Atlantic Ocean crashed against the rocky coast, matching the storm building inside my chest. I kept my hands calmly folded on the polished mahogany table. My face stayed still, controlled, unreadable. This was the first lesson my uncle, Elliot Sawyer, had taught me again and again. Emotion is information, he would say. Never give information away for free. At the head of the long table sat Marvin Clean, my uncle's personal attorney, and maybe the only man Elliot had ever completely trusted. Marvin was 70 years old, broad and solid like a retired football player, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. He adjusted his glasses slowly and studied the three of us with a cool, distant expression that almost looked like quiet judgment. He placed a small digital recorder in the center of the table and pressed a button. A small red light turned on, glowing softly, the only warm color in the cold room. "This reading is now officially in session," Marvin said, his voice deep and rough. "I must remind everyone present that these proceedings are being recorded. The contents of the last will and testament of Elliot Sawyer are legally sealed until this meeting is concluded. Any interruption or emotional outburst will result in immediate removal from the building." My mother, Paula Sawyer, shifted slightly in her chair. She let out a light, airy laugh, the kind she used at fancy parties to ease tension she herself had created. She looked at Marvin, then slowly turned her gaze toward me. It was the first time she had looked directly into my eyes since I was 16 years old. "Oh, Marvin, don't be so serious," she said. Her voice was exactly as I remembered, soft and musical and falsely sweet. "We are all family here, aren't we, sweetheart?" The word hit me like a punch to the stomach. Sweetheart it was. The same word she had used when she promised to pick me up from school and left me waiting alone on the sidewalk for 3 hours. It was the same word she used the night before. She packed her bags and disappeared, leaving behind an empty refrigerator, unpaid bills, and silence. I felt the muscle in my jaw tighten, but I did not speak. I just looked at her, forcing her to sit in the weight of her own lies. Paula did not flinch. She smiled wider, bright and polished, but her eyes stayed cold and flat. She turned back to the lawyer and waved her perfectly manicured hand gently. "It has been such a long time," she continued, leaning forward like she was sharing a secret. "Story. But tragedy brings people back together, doesn't it? I know Elliot and I had our disagreements, but he was still my older brother. Morgan and I will figure everything out. We can divide the millions as a family. It is what he would have wanted. She said it so casually. Divide the millions. As if 18 years of silence were a simple mistake. As if she had not abandoned me. As if she had not left Elliot to die alone in a hospital room while she was traveling through Europe, posting smiling photos. I noticed Marvin's eyes narrow slightly, but he did not interrupt her. He simply looked down at the thick document. In front of him, "Let us continue with the asset inventory," Marvin said, his tone cutting straight through her performance. He began to read carefully and clearly. The list was long and detailed, proof of the empire Elliot had built from nothing but intelligence and stubborn determination. He listed the primary residence, a large estate sitting high on the cliffs of Ravenport, valued at $8 million. He listed an extensive portfolio of patents connected to encrypted data transmission systems, producing yearly royalties in the mid-six figures. He listed diversified investment accounts, bonded trusts, international holdings, and carefully structured financial reserves. Then he paused slightly before reading the next line. 76% controlling interest in Black Harbor Defense Group, a private cybersecurity and intelligence firm with active contracts in both public and private sectors. Estimated current market valuation exceeds $40 million. The numbers seemed to hang in the air like heavy smoke. $40 million. Sitting next to my mother was Grant Weller. He was her boyfriend, or maybe her new husband. It did not really matter. He was a man in his early 50s who tried hard to look 40, wearing a suit that was slightly too shiny and a watch that was too large for his wrist. When Marvin said the words $40 million, Grant's eyes widened noticeably and he slowly licked his lips. He reached into his expensive leather briefcase and pulled out a thick blue folder. He slid it across the smooth table toward Marvin. With confident arrogance, Grant cleared his throat. "We assumed the estate would be complicated," he said smoothly. "So, to save everyone time, Paula and I had our legal advisors prepare some preliminary family settlement terms. We are prepared to be generous with Morgan, of course. A fair flat payout to secure her future, and then Paula will assume administrative control of the company. We want to honor Elliot's legacy by keeping the business in experienced hands." I almost laughed out loud. The thought of Paula managing a defense contractor was ridiculous. She could never even manage basic monthly bills. But Grant was not looking at me. He was staring at that folder like it already belonged to him. Marvin did not touch the folder. He did not even glance at it. He simply stopped reading. The silence grew heavier and thinner at the same time, changing from awkward to suffocating. Marvin reached slowly into his briefcase and removed a second envelope. It was not an ordinary legal document. It was thick, cream-colored, sealed with deep red wax. On the front, typed in bold, sharp letters, were the words, "Conditional Addendum. Only if Paula Sawyer appears." The entire atmosphere changed instantly. Like all the oxygen had suddenly disappeared from the room. Paula froze. Her hand, which had been reaching for a glass of water, stopped halfway. For just a brief second, the mask fell away. I saw fear. I saw understanding. She recognized that font. She recognized that tone. It was the voice of a man who always thought 3 steps ahead, who planned every move carefully. Then she recovered. She laughed again, but this time the sound was brittle and thin, like dry leaves breaking under pressure. "Oh, Elliot," she said softly, shaking her head. "Always dramatic, even from the grave. What is this? Some kind of last joke? Marvin placed his steady hand on top of the envelope and looked directly at her. His expression was serious. And heavy? Your brother expected this day, Marvin said quietly. He planned for it carefully. He gave me strict instructions that this envelope was only to be presented if you physically attended the reading. If you had chosen to stay away, if you had allowed Morgan to grieve peacefully, this document would have remained sealed forever. My mother's smile weakened. The corners of her mouth trembled slightly. She looked at the envelope and then at me? Suddenly she reached under the table and grabbed my hand. Her palm felt cold and damp. She squeezed tightly, her grip strong and desperate. Morgan, honey, she whispered urgently, do not let them do this. Your uncle was a complicated man. He held grudges. You know that. We are the only family left. We have to stand together against lawyers and paperwork. Whatever is inside that envelope, we can ignore it. We can make our own agreement. We can solve this privately. I looked down at our hands. Her knuckles were pale from the pressure. She was not holding my hand because she cared. She was holding it like a shield, like protection. She was afraid. Slowly and deliberately, I pulled my hand away from hers. I placed it calmly back on the table, separate and steady. Let him read it, I said quietly. My voice did not shake. Grant shifted in his chair as if he wanted to protest, to interrupt, maybe even to slam his fist against the table. But the small red light on the recorder continued glowing between us, silent and watchful, keeping him frozen in place. He understood that any kind of aggression right now would only make their claim to the $40 million more complicated. Marvin slowly broke the wax seal. The sound was sharp and dry, like a bone cracking in half. He carefully unfolded the paper. Inside, it was just one page, packed tightly with small print. Paula's face started losing its color before Marvin even finished reading the first paragraph silently to himself. Her tan seemed to fade into a dull gray, and her perfect makeup suddenly looked like cheap paint on a wall that was starting to crack. Deep inside, she already knew. She knew exactly what was about to happen. Marvin cleared his throat and began to read the addendum out loud. I, Elliot Sawyer, being of sound mind and clear judgment, hereby activate the following clause regarding the distribution of my estate. This clause is triggered only by the presence of my sister, Paula Sawyer, at the reading of my will. Her presence confirms that she has not honored the boundaries set 18 years ago and is seeking financial benefit from my death. Therefore, the following conditions are now active. Marvin stopped for a moment. He looked up over the edge of his glasses. Paula was no longer smiling. She stared at the document in Marvin's hands, like someone watching a live grenade roll slowly across the floor toward them. Grant leaned forward, his tone now sharp and hostile. This is absurd. You cannot tie an inheritance to sit down, Mr. Weller, Marvin snapped firmly. I am not finished speaking. The lawyer lowered his eyes back to the page. To my niece, Morgan Allen, I leave the entirety of my estate, including all properties, liquid assets, and the controlling interest in Black Harbor Defense Group. However, if Paula Sawyer contests this will, attempts to claim any part of these assets, or refuses to sign the attached admission of abandonment and debt acknowledgement, a secondary protocol will be activated immediately. Admission of abandonment. The words seemed to float in the air. Heavy. Poisonous. What is that? Paula whispered. Her voice shook. Marvin flipped the page, revealing a second document clipped behind the first. It is a sworn statement, he explained calmly. It details the events of November 4th, 18 years ago. It describes the condition in which you left your 16-year-old daughter. It also outlines the loan you tried to secure in Elliot's name 7 years ago, which qualifies as federal wire fraud. Elliot paid the legal fees to bury that case in order to protect the family name, but he kept every record. Paula turned completely white. Not pale, white. She looked like she might collapse at any second. If you sign this document admitting to these facts and agree to a lifetime ban from contacting Morgan Allen or any personnel from Black Harbor, you will receive a one-time settlement of $50,000, Marvin continued evenly. If you refuse to sign or if you try to challenge this will, in court, the poison pill clause will be triggered. Poison pill, Grant repeated, his voice tight and strained. In the event of a legal contest, Marvin read the entirety of the estate of Ridala. Every share, every brick of every property will be liquidated immediately and donated to the Sawyer Foundation for Homeless Youth. Neither Morgan Allen nor Paula Sawyer will receive a single cent. The room fell into complete silence. I looked at my mother. Understanding was slowly washing over her face. She thought she was fighting me for a slice of the pie. She did not realize that Elliot had rigged the entire bakery to blow up if she even touched the oven. "This is a bluff," Grant hissed angrily. "No one throws away $40 million just to prove a point." "You did not really know my uncle," I said quietly. Marvin looked directly at Paula. "The choice is yours, Ms. Sawyer. You may walk away today with $50,000 and your freedom, or you may fight for millions and make sure no one gets anything. And remember, if you choose to fight, the evidence regarding the wire fraud will be delivered to the district attorney." My mother turned to look at me. Her eyes were wide, pleading, desperate. I could almost see the millions she had already spent in her imagination. I could see the trap that had just slammed shut around her ankle. "Morgan," she choked out, her voice breaking. "You cannot let him do this. You are his heir. You can stop it. Tell him we will make a deal." I leaned back slowly in my chair. The leather felt cool against my spine. For the first time in 18 years, I was not the frightened girl sitting alone on a curb. I was the one holding the keys now. "I do not make deals with terrorists, Mom," I said calmly. Then I waited. The silence was the first thing that hit me that night. It was not the calm silence of a library or a church. It was thick and unmoving, like the air inside a sealed tomb. I was 16 years old, coming home from a 6-hour shift at a small diner where the smell of grease stuck to my skin like a second layer. I had $12 in crumpled tips shoved into my jeans pocket, and all I wanted was to heat up a frozen burrito and fall asleep to the soft noise of the television. Normally, the apartment was never quiet. My mother, Paula, hated silence. She filled every room with sound. Reality TV shows blasted at full volume. Phone calls on speaker where she complained to her friends about how unfair the world was. Or just the heavy sound of her footsteps when she paced back and forth between moods. There was always noise. But that Tuesday night, opening the front door felt like stepping into empty space. The television screen was black. The air smelled stale, like old coffee grounds and dust that had settled for too long. I called out a name, but my voice only bounced off the peeling beige walls in the narrow hallway. I dropped my backpack onto the linoleum floor and walked slowly into the kitchen. The refrigerator hummed loudly, a harsh mechanical sound that felt almost painful in the silence. I opened it. Inside there was a half-empty carton of milk, a jar of pickles, and one dried, shriveled lemon. The frozen burritos were gone. I walked to her bedroom. The door was slightly open. I did not panic right away. Panic is something people feel when they are not used to chaos. Instead, I felt a cold, sinking feeling in my stomach. It was familiar, like missing a step while walking downstairs in the dark. I pushed the door open wider. The bed was messy, the sheets twisted and wrinkled, but it was the closet that made everything clear. The closet door stood wide open, and where her clothes once hung, there was now only a row of empty wire hangers. They knocked gently against each other when the hallway draft moved them. Her nice coat was gone. Her shoes were gone. The 2 suitcases that normally collected dust under the window had disappeared. I went back into the kitchen slowly. That was when I noticed the note sitting on the counter, held in place by a salt shaker. It was written on the back of an overdue electric bill. Her handwriting looked rushed and uneven, the letters sharp and pressed hard into the paper. It did not say she was sorry. It did not say she loved me. It simply said, "I cannot do this anymore. I need space. You are 16. You will manage. Do not look for me." I stood there for a long time, staring at those words until they blurred together. I did not cry. Crying would have meant I was shocked. Deep down, under all the denial, I was not shocked. I was just tired. So tired. I crushed the note in my fist and threw it into the trash. 5 seconds later, I pulled it back out and flattened it carefully on the counter. I needed proof. If I threw it away, I might wake up the next morning and convince myself she had just gone out for groceries for 3 days. The next few days felt like I was frozen in time. I went to school because it was warm inside and they served free breakfast. I went to my shifts at the diner because I needed money for food. I came back to the silent apartment and slept with every light turned on. I told no one. I checked my phone every 10 minutes, waiting for a text message, a call, a voicemail. I called her number so many times that I memorized the exact rhythm of the automated voice telling me the subscriber was unavailable. I told myself she was having one of her episodes. She would calm down. She would run out of cash. She would come back home and act like nothing had happened. I would scream at her. She would yell back. Then we would order pizza and pretend it was normal again. That was our pattern. Patterns are comforting because they are predictable, but the pattern ended that Friday afternoon. I was sitting on the couch, eating peanut butter straight from the jar with a spoon, when a heavy fist pounded loudly on the front door. My heart slammed against my ribs. For one wild and hopeful second, I thought she had lost her keys. I opened the door. It was not my mother. It was the landlord, a thick-necked man with eyes that looked like wet stones. He leaned forward slightly and looked over my shoulder into the empty living room. "Where is she?" he demanded. "She is at work," I lied quickly. The lie tasted bitter in my mouth. "She will be back later." "Do not lie to me," he snapped. "I have not seen her car in 4 days, and the rent is 2 months overdue. I warned her last week. No more chances." 2 months. I felt the blood drain from my face. She told me she paid it. She showed me a confirmation number. "She lied," he said flatly, clearly uninterested in my shock. "You tell her she has 24 hours to bring the full amount, cash or certified check, or I am changing the locks and calling the sheriff. And if she is gone, I am calling child services. I am not running a halfway house for runaways." He slammed the door hard. The noise echoed through the apartment like a gunshot. The denial broke apart. The truth of the situation rushed in like icy water. I was 16 years old. I had $12.40 in my pocket. I had no food left. I was about to be homeless, and my mother had lied about paying the rent for 2 months while watching me take extra shifts to help buy groceries. I spent that night packing my things. I did not know where I was going, but I knew I could not stay there anymore. I put my school books, my 2 pairs of jeans, my uniform, and a photo of me and my dad, who I barely remembered, into a backpack. I sat on the floor of the empty living room and waited for the sun to rise. The apartment felt hollow, like it already belonged to someone else. The next morning, I walked into the school guidance counselor's office. Ms. Alvarez was a kind woman, with tired eyes, who always smelled like peppermint tea. I sat in the chair across from her desk, holding the straps of my backpack so tightly that my knuckles turned pale. "Morgan," she asked softly, "is everything okay? You have been late 3 times this week." I tried to answer, but my throat tightened. I took a breath, shaky and thin. I did not want to tell her. Saying it out loud would make it real. Saying it would mean I was officially a victim, a charity case, a number in a report. But the memory of the landlord's fist pounding on the door was louder than my pride. "My mom left," I said. The words came out like a whisper. Ms. Alvarez slowly put her pen down. "When?" she asked. "Tuesday," I said. "She is not coming back. And we are being evicted today." Everything moved fast after that. The system came alive like a machine turning on. There were phone calls and paperwork and quiet voices. In the hallway, a social worker named Mrs. Gable arrived within the hour. She was quick and organized, carrying a clipboard like it was armor. They asked me questions. Did I have any other family? Did I have anywhere else to stay? I gave them the only name I knew, Elliot Sawyer. My mother rarely talked about her brother, and when she did, her voice was full of bitterness. She called him a robot, a control freak, a man who loved spreadsheets more than people. She said he looked down on us from his tall tower of success. I had not seen him since I was 5 years old. I did not even know exactly where he lived, only that he was somewhere in the state and that he was wealthy. I sat in the main office for 4 long hours while Mrs. Gable made calls. I watched the clock on the wall tick away seconds that felt like pieces of my life falling apart. I imagined foster homes. I imagined sleeping in a crowded shelter. I prepared myself for the news that he did not want me. Why would he? His sister had left me behind. Why should he clean up the mess she made? The heavy double doors at the school entrance swung open. Elliot Sawyer did not look like a hero. He looked like a man who had been pulled away from an important business deal. He was tall, wearing a charcoal suit that fit him perfectly, with a crisp white shirt and a tie that probably cost more than my mother's car. His face was sharp and serious, completely unreadable. He walked into the office with a steady stride that demanded attention. Ms. Alvarez and Mrs. Gable both stood up. He barely noticed them and looked straight at me. His eyes were gray, like steel. He studied me from head to toe, taking in my worn sneakers, my faded jeans, the dark circles under my eyes. He did not smile. He did not hurry forward to hug me. He did not offer soft words about how everything would be okay. He looked at the social worker. "Is the paperwork ready, Mrs. Gable?" he asked. She blinked. "Yes, Mr. Sawyer. We just need to confirm temporary guardianship. My legal team is handling the official filing." He interrupted calmly. His voice was deep and steady. "And final. I am taking her now." He signed the documents without sitting down. He did not ask about my mother. He did not ask why she left. He treated the whole situation like a mistake that needed fixing. When he finished, he turned to me and pointed at my backpack. "Is that everything?" he asked. I nodded. "Yes. Pack what matters," he said. "We leave today." I followed him out to the parking lot. He drove a black sedan that shone under the afternoon light. He opened the trunk, and I tossed my backpack inside. It looked small and sad in the large, clean space. I got into the passenger seat. The inside of the car smelled like leather and nothing else. No food wrappers, no air fresheners, no mess. It was spotless. He slid into the driver's seat and started the engine. It hummed so softly I almost could not hear it. As we pulled out of the school lot, I stared out the window. I watched the building grow smaller, watching my old life shrink until it vanished around a corner. A sharp wave of fear hit me. I was in a car with someone I barely knew. I was going somewhere unfamiliar. I felt alone in a way that was heavy and deep. Elliot did not turn on the radio. He drove with both hands on the wheel, eyes focused on the road. After about 10 minutes of silence, he spoke. "I know what she told you about me," he said, still not looking at me. "She told you I was cold. She told you I did not care." I said nothing. I stared down at my hands. She was not wrong about the cold part. "I am not going to be a father to you, Morgan," he continued. "I do not know how to do that, and I am not going to pretend to be your friend." Tears burned behind my eyes. This was it. He was probably taking me to some strict boarding school or sending me far away. But then his voice grew firmer. "I am dependable. You will have a roof over your head. You will have food on the table. You will have a good education. And you will never have to wonder if the lights will turn on when you flip the switch." He stopped at a red light and finally looked at me. His face was intense, almost angry, but not at me. It felt like anger. At the world, at the mess that had allowed a 16-year-old girl to be thrown aside like she did not matter. "You will not have to beg for stability again," he said quietly. The light turned green, and he pressed the gas. The car moved smoothly onto the highway. I leaned my head against the cool glass of the window. I should have felt relieved. I had been saved. I was safe now. But as the highway signs rushed past, I realized I was more scared than I had been in the empty apartment. I was not afraid of him. I was afraid of the promise he was offering. I was afraid of the stability he described, because if I allowed myself to believe in it, if I got used to a full fridge and a warm bed and a life where adults did not disappear in the middle of the night, then if it ever ended, it would not just hurt. It would destroy me. I closed my eyes and tried not to hope. Hope was risky. Hope was the thing that broke your heart when it was taken away. But as the miles created distance between me and the mother who left me behind, the low hum of the engine felt almost like a heartbeat I wanted to believe in. Living in Elliot Sawyer's house felt like living inside a perfectly built machine. Everything was measured, quiet, and extremely efficient. The chaos of my old life, the overdue bills, the shouting matches, the constant question of whether there would be milk in the fridge, was replaced by a silence so thick it felt heavy. His estate in Ravenport was not a home in the usual way. It was a structure made of glass, steel, and dark wood, sitting on the edge of a cliff, as if challenging the ocean below. Inside, there was no dust anywhere. There were no stacks of mail. On the counters, there were no shoes left in the hallway. The air was cool and filtered, always kept at a steady 68 degrees. During the first week, I walked around quietly, almost on my toes, afraid that if I made too much noise, the house itself would reject me like I did not belong there. Elliot did not believe in parenting the way other people did. He believed in management and order. On my second morning, I came downstairs at 10 o'clock, still wearing my pajamas, my eyes tired from staring at the ceiling all night. Elliot was already gone, but on the marble kitchen island there was a single sheet of thick paper with my name printed neatly at the top. It was not a list of chores. It was a detailed schedule. 6:30 a.m., wake up. 7 o'clock breakfast. 8 o'clock to 3 o'clock school. 3:30 to 4:30 physical activity. 5 o'clock to 6 o'clock skill development, 6:30 dinner, 10 o'clock lights out. I stared at the page for a long time. It felt less like a plan and more like a sentence handed down by a judge. Slowly, I crushed the paper in my hand and threw it into the stainless steel trash bin. When Elliot returned that evening, the house was dim. I was in the living room watching television, my feet resting on the coffee table, a bag of chips open beside me. I was waiting for him to react. I wanted him to yell. I wanted him to lose control. If he shouted at me, then I would understand the rules. If he exploded in anger, he would be just like my mother, and I knew how to survive that. You block it out. You wait for the storm to pass. Elliot stepped inside. He looked at the television screen, then at my feet on the table, then at the crumbs scattered on the floor. He did not shout. He did not even sigh. He simply walked to the wall, picked up a remote control, and turned off the television.
If you liked the video, then subscribe our YouTube channel and hit the bell like button.